Good evening, everyone. It is July 28th. We're doing our Facebook Live on a different day to make sure we have a wonderful special guest join us. I'm going to introduce her in just a moment, and we are going to talk about the International Student Visa Program. How can one obtain one inside, outside? So if you have any questions or anybody in mind that you would like to learn about studying here in the U.S., please send us your questions. Hey, Bashar, how are you? Mr. Bashar, thanks for joining us. And I will go ahead and share some good news as we wait to introduce Ms. Khan. First, one of our car accident cases, we sent our initial demand and they tendered the whole policy on that first demand. A lot of times there's back and forth between the insurance companies to negotiate, but with this individual's injuries, they offered the full policy, which doesn't actually cover all the bills, but thankfully he has If you remember, I'm constantly telling you guys about uninsured motorist insurance and how important it is to have it so you don't get stuck paying bills. Other good news is that this is the last Thursday of July. So next week we'll be doing August, and it's back to school. And so this is actually a timely moment to introduce our guest and to introduce this topic. No, Bindi. So then Ms. Khan, Christina Khan, has been working in the educational field for over 18 years, supporting, advising, and mentoring international students. She's the director at UCF Global. She was working at the University of Texas at El Paso and launched her first program at Colgate University. You guys are going to see, you cannot convey the kind of kindness and dedication that this individual has for her students and her university. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Ms. Christina Khan from UCF.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Naya, for allowing me to be here today. It's really wonderful to see you.
Thank you for coming. I mean, this is honestly, we appreciate what you do for our local community, and I know how much you care about your international students. It's actually how we met. UCF has a large Middle East population, and Christina and Natalie from UCF was also, how can we help better serve our students? And that's kind of how we started communicating. So Christina, tell me how you are committed to education. And I don't know if you know this, my sister's an assistant principal. How did you get into this field?
I really got into this field. I was a first-generation college student, and I had a work-study award. And one of the places that was hiring work-study students was the international office. So from my first day of college, I worked in the international office. All of my friends were international students, and I just realized how important these services are for international students who are coming to the United States to study. And that's really where I found my passion and my niche, and I've been in this field ever since.
You know, something that I've learned the last few years is what a huge impact economically and industry-wise the students do. You know, we have all these students coming from all over the world. They rent apartments, they either get jobs, they contribute to research. So it really does help make sure we're getting like the best and brightest from around the world. And, you know, that's part of what UCF Global's great reach.
Yeah, absolutely. At UCF Global, we're on a quest to be able to transform lives and provide access to high impact international experiences, whether that's through our intensive English program, where we have students coming to learn English and prepare themselves to go into either a bachelor's degree, master's, doctoral program. We also have the online English program, and that's more academic and vocational so that students can really learn from the innovative curriculum, but with more flexibility and at their own pace, as well as a lot of other programs and services really to support the international community. So we've got a lot happening.
I have questions for you because I mean we do get a lot of interest about studying here, UCF, and what programs are available. You mentioned the comprehensive or intensive English program.
Yeah.
What about 4-year degrees like becoming a bachelor's of science and engineering? Is that something available for international students?
Yes, absolutely. UCF has over 230 different degree programs at the bachelor's, master's, and doctoral level. We have really strong programs. The programs that are really popular, and especially with our international students, are within the College of Engineering and Computer Science. A lot of the STEM fields, hospitality management is a huge program, especially being in Orlando, and psychology. We have a lot of different programs to meet students' educational interests and their career goals.
I don't know if you know this, but I was a civil engineering major at UCF, probably for about a year, an undergrad before I switched. But it was a great program. We got to do some, building bridges or exercise things, and I just kind of had flashbacks when you mentioned those programs. So, Christina, when is the semester starting for your school this fall?
So semester starts August 23rd, right around the corner. So we're gearing up to welcome all of our new students at the end of August.
All right, and I can't even believe we're saying that it's August of 2021.
Yeah, time has flown.
And we are at my office. We have decided that this year, for our 5-year anniversary, we are going to do a back-to-school drive. So we have basically got about 100 backpacks filled with supplies for students. So for any of our clients who are watching this, please email contact@Mubarak Law or message us on social media because we'll be giving away backpacks and school supplies. And we hope to get to see you guys. It's been so long since we've had some face-to-face contact. We'll set up a drive-through and you guys can pick up the backpacks for school. There'll be more details on that to come. Okay, Christina, so we get so many people, especially locally, who might have family, let's say in Lebanon or Jordan or Indonesia, and they say, I want to bring my nephew here so he can study. How does somebody who's abroad go about obtaining an F1 visa, or how does that work with UCF?
Yeah, so UCF Global is here to support you through that process. And there's a lot of steps, to be honest, and we're here to help you through it. The first step would really to be identify the program that you're interested in and submit your application for admission. Application for admission is online, whether it's an undergraduate or graduate. If you need to learn English because English proficiency is required for admission, coming to our intensive English program is a great way to meet the English proficiency requirement of the university without having to do the TOEFL or IELTS exam. So we have many students that actually start in our intensive English program and then they get acclimated to campus, they're learning English, and then go on to do their bachelor's or their master's or doctoral program at UCF. Students who complete the intensive English program also have the opportunity, if they're from the Latin American and Caribbean region, to earn a scholarship that actually makes them eligible for in-state tuition. So that's a really great opportunity.
That's huge, right?
Yeah.
Because the international student tuition versus in-state student tuition, I think it's it's a considerable amount of savings.
Definitely.
And I actually didn't know about that scholarship exists, to be honest. So that's great for anybody who qualifies. So when you say that you help them or guide them through the process, I mean, is there a website they go to, or what is the first step in trying to pursue this?
Yeah, so global.ucf.edu will have information about how to apply, but basically you're submitting your application for admission and then also your academic transcripts and those types of things that are needed for an admission decision. Once a student is admitted, then that's where UCF Global helps to issue what's called an I-20. And this is official document that you need to actually apply for an F1 visa at the U.S. Consulate in your home country. And so UCF Global will guide you through that visa application process, provide you the I-20 that you need. And we do a lot of information sessions and give you a lot of good information so that you can prepare for your arrival to the United States to study at UCF.
And I've said this too many times in consultations. Maybe I'm not a good businessman or too honest, but people have come to us looking for student visas, especially if they're abroad for their family members. And I always just direct them to UCF or Valencia, because I know that you all have the capabilities of walking them through it. And I advise them that, there's no need, if they don't take on or your assistance or your case, come back. But a lot of times they don't, because you all walk them through the process, and at least they, know that there's a school that has their back. So I appreciate you guys doing that, and I feel safe sending them. I know your experience with this. Sometimes I even brainstorm with you when we have complex situations revolving international students. So a little bit of a complex situation. If you haven't known too much about an F1 visa, if you're here on a tourist visa and you are considering possibly studying, you're not sure, you're visiting, I decide, hey, I really like it here, I wonder if I can study here. Is it not recommended, but is it absolutely required for the person to leave to apply?
No, it's not required. There is a possibility to apply for a change of status within the United States. The caveat is that process is time consuming. It takes many months, sometimes close to a year. And especially for individuals who are here on a tourist visa, you can't study during that time. So, if you're really wanting to start your studies right away, usually it's a better option to apply for the F1 visa abroad and come back with F1 status. But, those are the types of things that UCF Global will help you determine and find the best plan for your particular situation. And often our students will do that in coordination with their immigration attorneys.
Right. So I will have those same conversations with my clients, and now with COVID and kind of the backlog at these embassies, and for all my clients who are patiently waiting, it's not just you, right? Christina, do you have people waiting for their appointments and for their visas?
Yeah, I mean, and what happens is sometimes appointments get scheduled and then later canceled as the COVID conditions in the local country are not improving, or so we are seeing that backlog, and also still people hoping and waiting to get their visa appointments. But it's the situation's improving. It's a lot better than it was a couple months ago.
Yeah, and you said that recently some of your students have had them issued, correct?
Yeah, we've actually in the past several weeks we've seen many of our students start to get their visas, which is really great news. COVID's really been disruptive, for everybody, but especially in terms of visa processing. So we're starting to see that situation improve around the world.
So we were talking about change of status, and I brought up COVID because of the delays, because sometimes if the client tells me look, I really don't want to stay in Venezuela because of the dangerous situation or because of the political climate or instability, I want to do a change of status. I don't care how long it is. And, to be honest, I think that's a fair point, depending on certain people's circumstances, or even if some embassies have backlogs that are great. So I think what somebody should do in this situation is speak to their advisors, get a second opinion with their immigration attorney, or consult with an attorney. This is what we're looking for here. And we do have a question, but quick, I'm gonna say hi to my friend Richard, genius, expert medical malpractice attorney. Thanks for joining us, Richard. And then Miss Iman is asking us a question. Can asylum apply for UCF Global and get assistance? She is in the UCF. In the USA. So this is somebody who has I believe the question, Iman, correct me if I'm wrong, if somebody is in high school and a pending asylum, how are they treated with UCF?
So students can study at UCF regardless of their immigration status. And so we have many students who are asylum seekers who are students here at UCF. So I encourage you, if they have particular questions and need some help, to reach out to UCF Global. Global.ucf.edu has all of our contact information, and we would be happy to talk with them.
And I'll put this link here for anybody who didn't see it. And people who do, I guess, have pending asylums, are they considered international students as far as rates are concerned?
It really depends. Those decisions are made during the admission process. And so it's probably a good idea. You can't give a blanket statement because it depends on each person's situation. So it's a good idea to consult with undergraduate or graduate admissions. But you can always start with UCF Global and we'll point you in the right direction.
So, Iman, thank you for that question. I'm happy we were able to answer it. And hopefully you can reach out to Christina or UCF Global and see what programs are available for any pending asylum seekers. So we do have some questions that we see very often, and we want to go ahead and start addressing these. So, for example, when I do an investor visa or an E2, sometimes there's a very particular set time frame where somebody is admitted for an authorized stay. What is the maximum or length of time of an F1 visa? I'm throwing it out there a bad question because I know it's a bad question, but can you explain the time frame or the authorization period for that individuals on an F1? How long can they stay in the U.S.?
It's a great question. It's one we get a lot. So F1 status is a little bit different than like a tourist where you're admitted to the United States for a certain fixed period of time. With an F1 status, you are able to remain in the U.S. indefinitely as long as you're still a full-time student and following all of the F1 immigration rules. So you have this document that I mentioned before called an I-20, and that has information about the program you're studying as well as the dates of your study. So it's pretty common that we have students who earn a bachelor's degree and then go on to get a graduate degree. And so they may be with us for many years, and that's completely possible. And there isn't necessarily a fixed period.
Right.
It's just the time that you're enrolled in the full course.
I've actually seen people on it for like 10 plus years. I said, what have you been doing? Like, well, I came, I learned English, I got my associates, got my bachelor's, master's, and now they're like in, a PhD program. So, that does happen. And as long as they're maintaining their status and renewing or obtaining new I-20s, they can stay here kind of indefinitely, as Christina mentioned. Now, I think this next question is one that you probably get more often. I'm an international student. I'm here on an F1. I've arrived to learn English. When can I start to work?
So there are a lot of opportunities for international students to gain hands-on experience in their field of study. Now, for students who are still learning English, the only option during the English training portion of their studies would be to work on campus. So at a large school like UCF, there are many on-campus jobs where you could work, for example, in the library or the recreation and wellness center, the gym. Like there's a lot of opportunities to work on campus and gain experience. But once a student is in their degree program, whether that's bachelor's, master's, doctoral program, not only can they work on campus, but after they've been enrolled for a year, they become eligible for something called curricular practical training. And this is an authorization to do an internship off campus that's directly related to their major. So we see students get a lot of great opportunities to work in tech or work in, hospitality industry, whatever their major is. We see a lot of opportunities, especially in a city like Orlando, where there's a lot of different types of industries located here.
Right. And I think that's key for international students to find other options post-graduation to continue to live or work in the United States. And what I mean by that is a lot of times we get asked, how can I start working? Can you help me find a job of somebody who's willing to sponsor me? And I usually suggest, well, what's your level of education? Oh, you have a bachelor's degree in your home country. Perhaps you can pursue a master's and then you get CPT or OPT and really get your foot in the door and see if an employer would be willing to sponsor you and lead to what's next after your F1 status when you leave that status. So heading there, what do you see as a common segue for students who are no longer going to study? They've completed their graduation. What happens next?
Yeah, so students who graduate typically will apply for optional practical training, or OPT, like you mentioned. This is a year of work authorization to work at any employer as long as the job is directly related to your major. And then STEM major students can apply for an additional 2 years of a STEM OPT. So this for total, yeah, so a total of 3 years of employment authorization.
Can you
And
explain
many,
STEM to the viewer, anybody watching?
yeah,
What
yeah.
it is?
STEM is our majors within science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So to be eligible for STEM extension, the employment has to meet a couple additional requirements, but we see that many of our STEM students, especially at UCF, go on to do STEM OPT and have really great opportunities to build their experience, build their resume, and for many of them, it results in an H-1B sponsorship.
Right. So H-1B, we've talked about that before on here, the non-immigrant visa with the lottery system in most cases. And, if you are on OPT and you apply and are selected, a lot of times you could remain here until your H-1B status is commences, which is usually October 1st. So we have been seeing a lot of changes recently coming through the immigration pipeline. And one of those was for when you do a change of status application, you no longer have to bridge the gap of your tourist visa or whatever status you maintain. That's a positive change for international student applicants because it saves them time and money usually. Now, another change we've seen is something that we've talked about is temporary protected status, and as recently for Venezuelans, and redesignation for Haiti and Syria. Many people believe that because they are in lawful status, that they can, as a student, they cannot register for TPS. And I've given my position on that, which is you can register, but you cannot violate the terms of your student visa. And we'll get into that in a second. But Christina, what is your opinion about registering for TPS if you are in lawful status?
I absolutely concur with your point of view. Absolutely register for TPS. The only caveat being, using the employment authorization, if you apply for that with it, it's okay to apply for it, but if you would use that to qualify for employment, right, that could cause you to no longer be able to keep the F1 status, but absolutely register for TPS.
So it's what you have to think about is if you're maintaining two statuses at the same time, you have to respect the rules of both. So just because you have a work permit with your TPS does not mean you're authorized to work under your F1. So by working through your TPS, you would violate your F1 status. So again, if you are in lawful status and you're considering TPS, you should definitely consult with an attorney or your advisors prior to doing anything that might jeopardize your status. That's going to be my warning for today. And as you know, this is all general kind of discussion. If you have specific legal questions, please contact us for a consultation. So what's happening now with the time of COVID and online studying and international students? Can they take online courses but still get an F1 visa? What's UCF's model and what is permitted?
Yeah, I mean, guidance has been constantly changing throughout COVID, but at UCF, students can continue to enroll online if they're already in their program and here in the US. New students who are arriving to the US for the first time at UCF need to have at least one in-person class, but the rest can be online. So UCF is planning a full return to normal activities in the fall semester. So there will be a lot more in-person courses than there have been over the past couple semesters with COVID. But yes, it's still very flexible to ensure students who are back home can continue their studies if they're not able to return to the United States at this time.
And I know we've talked about F1, but could you just generally define an F1 visa? And because there's other different types of educational visas like a J, an M, and kind of talk about those if you don't mind, Christina.
Yeah, so an F1 visa is a particular type of visa, and the purpose of that visa is to study. So you're coming to the United States to do full-time studies. Your primary purpose is to be a student. So UCF, the most of our international students at UCF are here on an F1 visa. That's the most common. There's also the J1 visa. This is an exchange visitor visa. It's a little bit different. There are many different categories of J1s, student being one of them. But we also at UCF have many people who are coming to do research, and they're not students, they're doing research in our labs, they're teaching courses, and they're coming as scholars. And so there's a lot of opportunity for cultural exchange. That's really the purpose of the J visa.
See a lot of J's from, especially in the hospitality industry, people coming to work in Central Florida for a certain period of time. So can they, if somebody's interested in J1, can they still reach out to UCF Global to see if there's a program that applies, or is it only for F1s?
No, J1s, if they're eligible, they can possibly get a J1 visa. There's a couple different requirements for to be eligible for the J1 as a student, but we would definitely explore those options with them. The other student visa is not something that we have at UCF, but there are other community colleges and vocational schools. It's the M1 visa. This is more for vocational type of programs, but it's not a visa that we have at UCF.
Okay. Now, when an individual is here and then they decide that, I guess not that they want to stop going to class, but what are restrictions of the F1 or that you should avoid in order to keep your status? And I know you guys do an orientation for your students. We talk about doing possibly a know your rights from a different point of view. But what are some tips you can give to individuals as far as protecting or preserving their F1 status?
So great question. So maintaining the F1 status is really important, and probably one of the most important aspects of that is to be enrolled full-time in classes. So the purpose of the F1 visa is to be a student. You got to be enrolled in classes to meet that requirement. There are some other restrictions in terms of not working off campus without authorization, and to update your address and everything with the school. But we do a lot of orientation and reminders to students. It's a lot to remember. So we're here to support our students to make sure they can remain compliant with their requirements.
And are there travel restrictions if you're here, you have a valid I-20? I feel like I'm testing you, Christina. Let's say somebody has a visa on their passport that is no longer valid, but their I-20 is valid. Are they still in status for all intents and purposes if they're maintaining their requirements inside the U.S.?
Yes. So it's okay if the visa stamp that's in your passport expires, as long as you have a valid I-20, which is this document we've talked about a couple of times, and are still a full-time student maintaining your status otherwise. But if you are traveling outside of the US and your visa's expired, you most likely will need to renew it. There are some exceptions if you're traveling to Canada, Mexico, or the Caribbean islands for a short visit. It is possible to re-enter with an expired visa, but there are some restrictions on that. So I would advise that you either consult your attorney or work with your school, such as UCF, or if you're at another school, work with your international student advisor to discuss your travel plans before you make them.
Now, sometimes one of the requirements to maintain your status is keeping your course load as in compliance with the I-20. If somebody, God forbid, has an emergency or a sickness, what is something that they need to do in order to protect their status or make sure they're not violating their status?
Yeah, so the immigration regulations actually allow for an exception to the full-time study requirement if there is a documented illness or medical condition. So I would say, in the unfortunate situation that a student would find themselves in that situation, to reach out to the International Student Office so that we can help with making sure that you can apply for that and receive that authorization. But also, universities often have many other resources to help support students, whether it's mental health support or getting you connected with medical care that you need. We can really be a connecting point to those services if you need it as well.
Christina, what languages do you speak? Your name, I want to give people an idea of your background, if you're comfortable sharing that with us. I believe we're related somehow.
Yes. Well, I'm very lucky that I come from a very multicultural family, but I'm Palestinian American. I speak English and Spanish fluently, a little bit of Arabic, a little bit of Bengali. My husband is from Bangladesh, and so I wish I could speak a little better than I could, but
You
I'm
are
trying
a
to learn.
great representative for a international UCF global program. We're at 6:30, but I just have a couple more questions. I think we have an opportunity to have you here. So where are most of our international students from UCF coming from, and what services do we provide for people who don't speak, the English language?
So we have over 137 different countries. So our international student body is incredibly diverse. I would say our top countries: China, India, Saudi Arabia, I believe Brazil. They sometimes change every semester, but we have students from really every region. And so that's one of the things I love about UCF. It's such a diverse place, and lots of different programs of study as well.
Christina, thank you so much for your time and your knowledge. And again, I consider it service to our community, and thanks for what you do at UCF Global. And UCF Global is very active in the community too. So I guess if there's any particular event that you think might be of interest to UCF, please reach out to UCF Global, and maybe you guys can work together on something. Now, a couple quick points. Today was the last day of the Florida bar exam. So for any of my interns who took the 2-day scariest tests of their life, I'm sure you did just fine. Now you get to wait 2 months in purgatory waiting for your results. So congratulations to those who have completed their bar exam. We'll see you here next week for our next Facebook Live. Please send us your questions. If you know anybody overseas who wanted to learn about the student visa process, please share this link with them. And again, subscribe to our social medias. You'll be seeing our August 1st newsletter in a few days with all the latest updates that we've covered. Christina, thank you again. Anything else you'd like to add?
I would just like to say thank you, Naif. Mubarak Law does so much to support the immigrant community here in Central Florida. So I really thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and just really respect and admire the work you do in the community.
Thank you. It's very nice of you. Thank you. Have a good night, guys.